All right. Well, hello all and welcome back to the show. Glad to have all of you. Today, it's me. It's Jackson. I am he, we, to. And also we have Peter, my host of the show and co-host of the show. Welcome. Glad to have you as always.
Glad to be here. How do we know it's you? Because you're not on camera. How do we
Well, I
know?
don't want to test the internet gods today.
Okay. Yeah, that.
We've had some issues here with the
Mm-hmm.
Louisiana internet deities, so I don't want to
Yeah.
test them any further.
Okay.
um and also we're gonna have the show going for most of it, so it'll be fun.
Mm-hmm.
And we also have Nestlig, who is one of the editors of my various YouTube scripts. Always happy to have you on the show.
Glad to be here.
Fantastic.
And again, the Dutch outnumbered the Americans on Jackson's channel 2-1.
It's true. That's probably how it is for anti-creationism content in general. I bet there's a whole bunch of Dutch guys and then the rest of the world,
Yeah. So
I don't know.
I think there's more activism when it comes to rebutting young Earth creationism in the U.S. than there is in the Netherlands, because there are not a lot of young Earth creationists running around in the Netherlands. At least I couldn't name one.
You guys have to reach across the pond to find some, huh?
There are some, and I did make a note because one of them seems to have a YouTube channel and seems to be active. I recently discovered him, but I couldn't tell you his name. I have to go back because that's someone that I want to talk to.
I think I know what you talk about, but I also don't know the name of that person. Yeah, and the last time I saw him or them, I think it's just the exact same argument copy pasted from across the pond. Yeah.
Yes, because I mean, and
it's the same as the Islam creationists. They also have the same arguments.
Yeah.
Copy pasted.
And I still wish.
ICR?
I still wish that I had heard of young Earth creationism earlier, because right when I started out my Twitter account, I discovered that where I used to go on holiday, the city of Heidelberg, close to that was the Creation Museum. And I kid you not, the Creation Museum was located in some guy's bedroom. And he had created most of Genesis out of Legos and Playmobil.
That's kind of awesome.
Yes.
Good for him.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Although
funny that you.
It has since
funny that
closed.
You mentioned it because
yeah, it has closed.
You know, I don't know if I would go into someone's house on the information that they have the Book of Genesis in Lego in their bedroom. I think I might steer clear.
That, to me, that is an irresistible thing not to visit, because I would bring my camera. I would do a live interview with the guy who ran that particular creation museum. And he had videos on YouTube as well. And that also, I'd saved those links. And then when I recently thought, hey, let's go check and see if I can get that guy on my channel. Yeah, YouTube channel disappeared. It does seem that he gave away all of his exhibitions to a bigger creation museum somewhere in Germany, but I haven't been able to find where that is and if indeed his stuff is on display there, because still, I would definitely go visit.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because last summer, my family and I were traveling around to Europe with an RV, and on the way back, we I did not know this, but on the way back, I saw a big a sign saying the home of Heidelberg man. And I'm like, I'm it's this place. That's where the fossil was found, apparently. Did not know that.
The various
another
Heidelberg men, women, and children.
Another fun fact, we do have a brand new Noah's Ark just a few miles from where I live in the Dutch city of Almelo. And for the Dutch people who are watching, they all know, in Almelo is altijd wat te doen. Eén stoplicht springt op rood, een ander springt op groen, as per Herman Vinkers. But yeah, so they built an ark in Almelo, and so they're currently investigating about what they're going to do with it, because it is being used as a public urinal as well as a place for young couples to have sex. So it did get some new functions. It gained a new.
Well, Peter, it seems they are going 2 by 2 to the Ark, apparently, aren't they?
That it is. That's probably it, because they have to be male and female. So I mean, anyway, and since we have a Mile High Club, why not start a Noah's Ark Club and do the same thing somewhere in Kentucky? Make sure you have sex in Kentucky and then post it on the internet. I'm pretty sure Ken Ham would really like that, because it says in the Bible, go forth and multiply. So if they do that at your ark, I mean, replenish the earth.
They're just multiplying.
From the ark. Yeah. It is literally what God said. Okay,
fair.
I'll stop giving people bad ideas. Now,
all right.
Let's get to the other guy who's going to give us bad ideas.
One bit of news before we start. I don't follow Stephen Meyer, but Twitter recommends me a lot of his very stupid tweets, and I can't resist the urge to comment on them because he's an idiot also. Well, Gunter Beckley penned a another, at least one.
It's Gunther.
Yeah, Gunter Beckley.
That's never mind.
Pinned at least one blog post to Professor Dave regarding the Meyer script. Now, Beckley did 3 articles about the Casey Luskin video that Professor Dave did, but now he's writing them about the Meyer video also. And as one of the writers of the Meyer script, I'm very excited, to look those over. And mostly, however, the Meyer piece is just Beckley saying that Professor Dave was really mean. Like, that's it. He just says that Professor Dave uses gutter language, I think was the phrase. So, like, think of the children kind of stuff. It's pretty hilarious.
Anyway. You also remember how he responds to, like, our friend Rational Mind. He says that the rational mind is this know-it-all grad student.
Yeah. Well, yeah, so, exactly. Yeah, if they use insults, it's fine. If we use insults, it's pearl clutches. So whatever. They're just hypocrites. At any rate, all right. So
reminds me of a recent Twitter back and forth between someone who in that back and forth, by the way, said that he was a qualified PhD scientist to speak about evolution. His PhD is in chemistry. And he plays chess.
They tend to do that.
So if you play chess and you have a PhD in chemistry, that makes you an evolutionary biologist, apparently.
I guess so.
Mm-hmm.
So today we are returning to Frank Turek, whose hour-long video we have been responding to. We've done 2 videos on it so far, where we just laugh at how dumb everything he says is. I don't know how else to really say it. I told my friend who's a botany professor that apparently evolutionists never talk about plants, and I think he about had a stroke.
Yeah.
Anyways, if you don't get that, go watch our other episodes. All right.
And the episode
ready?
you did with the last guy you interviewed, I forgot his name.
Oh, Brian Gitzlag.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because you touched on it.
Yes, that was
there as well.
Yes, it was a fun chat. Brian does a lot of very interesting research. We thought we were going to have an interviewee tonight, but maybe we'll get that person on next time. Who knows? We'll find out.
We'll see.
All right. I guess we're ready.
Okay. Let's start the video.
I love that illustration because I think it brings it right down to home. 2 minutes at about 9 o'clock at night or 9:30 at night. Gould went on to say this, that it does not support gradualism. The history of most fossil species includes two features particularly inconsistent with gradualism. Here's what he said.
I have to jump in because he did say it. I listened to it several times because I had to set this up and get to this particular time. He did say a Gould, which is a character from Stargate SG-1. It's obviously pronounced Goa'uld, but he did say a Gould, and I can't unhear that.
Stephen Jay Gould.
Yeah, I mean, I've interacted with a Gould, and I made artwork for a Gould, so this is, yeah, it sticks. Okay, never mind.
Yeah.
Said stasis,
anyway,
most species exhibit no directional change during their tenure on Earth. They appear in the fossil record looking much the same as when they disappear. Morphological change is usually limited and directionless. And then he goes on to say sudden appearance. In other words, they come together all at once, fully formed. So that's exactly the opposite of what we would say Darwinism is. They come in immediately and they...
So let's take a moment to talk about probably the second most misquoted scientist in all of human history, who is Stephen Jay Gould. The first probably goes to Darwin. I'll give him that honorific. Peter, can you make the screen a little bit bigger, please? On this end? I can't.
Oh, funny that you mentioned it because I was making my own screen bigger too.
There we go. Okay. Okay, the history of most fossil species includes two features particularly inconsistent with gradualism. Okay. Alrighty. So this, I don't know if this is true. However, I am very much willing to say that a lot of lineages do exhibit features which are inconsistent with, drumroll, phyletic gradualism. Why is that? Well, phyletic gradualism is one of two modes of evolution. Modes, well, and I say they're two. They're kind of like ends of a continuum, right?
Yes.
So you have on the one end, you have phyletic gradualism, in which you have this constant, slow evolution over generations, where one organism is evolving into a new species or a set of new species, and then on the other hand, on the opposite extreme of this continuum, you have punctuated equilibrium, where you have essentially stasis, morphological stasis or genetic stasis. Then you have a very rapid period of evolution, and then you have stasis again. Now, both of these...
And a rapid period is defined as several thousands of tens of thousands of years.
That's right, if not a few million years.
Yeah, also.
Right, so now, like we said, both of these are opposite ends. They're opposite extremes on a continuum. There is a whole an infinite set of intermediates between these two. You can have slow gradual change, then rapid change, then slow gradual change again, or you can have stasis and then gradual change and then rapid evolution, whatever. These can all be true simultaneously. Phyletic gradualism is just one extreme, and it happens in some lineages, and you can look at examples of like foraminifera, diatoms, radiolarians, coccolithophores, all these phytoplankton, which I think we've talked about them before in this. Creationists just never talk about. These are things that never get brought up. Well, ideas don't talk about them because they are beautiful examples of gradualism. You can look; they're used as index fossils, and you can see how they change from layer to layer very gradually. And creationists, young Earth creationists, just don't talk about them at all because they completely implode the global flood argument. If you have shells which are ordered by species and are all about the same size, how do you explain that on a flood model? This great torrential downpour, which somehow didn't mix up all the microscopic phytoplankton? How did that happen? And there's an exceptionally
Whirlpools.
some millions of magical whirlpools all at once. Yes. There's an exceptionally good video by Joel Duff over on his channel. Go check his channel out if you haven't. And he talks about how there are too many fossils to be explicable on a global flood model. What does that mean? Well, if you go to a if you go to a fossil site, or you can find fossil sites, I should say, where the entire stratum is just fossils.
Yeah.
This happens for like phytoplankton, like the White Cliffs of Dover. They're just phytoplankton. You can find examples where hills are made of belemnite fossils. And so researchers have actually... Go ahead.
I'm now imagining the meme, like you see a White Cliff of Dover, and one guy says, wait, it's all fossil? Always has been.
Right, yeah, the astronaut behind him with the gun, yeah.
Yeah.
Or in that case, it'd be a paleontologist with a gun, yeah. It's Jack Horner pointing a gun at like at somebody. Well, there are hills that are entirely belemnite fossils, and researchers have actually done the calculation as to how many belemnite fossils are in this hill, and their calculations put it at over a quadrillion. Now that is fine within an ancient time scale because you have millions of years of these belemnites in populations of, maybe thousands, tens of thousands, or millions. But if you have a global flood and the Earth is only 10,000 years old, where are you putting those quadrillion belemnite fossils? Where are they going? The same is true of the White Cliffs of Dover. Where are all those phytoplankton coming from? It just doesn't make any sense. I have a fossil rock, I think it's from Wyoming, and much of it is snail shells. Where are all the snails coming from? How does this happen if the Earth is only 6,000 to 10,000 years old? Doesn't make any sense. But that's evidence for gradualism. Anyway, back to this. Most species exhibit no directional change during their tenure on Earth. They appear in the fossil record looking much the same as when they disappear. Morphological change usually limited and directionless. Maybe so for a species, I guess, because it also depends on how you define species. If you're using the morphological species concept, which you have to when you're dealing with fossils a lot of the time, then a species is a population, a fossil, a population that has a certain set of characteristics. Well, as soon as that population doesn't have those characteristics anymore, it's not that species anymore. Right?
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, would you say that this new species just suddenly appeared? Well, probably not. We have an ancestral population that had a slightly different set of morphological characters, and now we have a population with a slightly different set. So they didn't just appear out of nowhere. And when you look at, and again, this is something creationists don't do because they don't care or they don't know either way. When you look at examples of fossils like brachiopods or belemnites or forams, whatever, these marine organisms who have these extremely good fossil records, a lot of cases, researchers have developed like species level phylogenies of these different organisms. You can actually see how the species are related through the fossil record.
Right.
Over like a scale of a few million years. It's that good. The scale is that good. And so when you look at it at that scale, this idea that everything just suddenly appears vanishes. But Turek's never going to talk about that. Stephen Meyer's never going to talk about that. Kent Ham's never going to talk about that. These are things they just don't talk about because they can't. because it totally implodes their argument.
It's weird that at one hand they will say like, oh, they will accept something they call microevolution even
Right.
across species, but then they will look at the Stephen Jay Gould and say like, oh, it's so like, even though punctuated equilibrium is at the species level, so they
Right.
shouldn't have any problem with that. But then they of course frame it as something like a instant evolution, like oh, out of nowhere, like then they will frame it like that, even though it's not.
You're right. They have no well, most of the major organizations have no problem with speciation, natural selection, even mutations to most extents. But then they
also bear in mind that according to their young Earth flat model, then you would need something even faster than punctuated equilibrium to get all the animals today.
Right, exactly. Now the bit about sudden appearance, that may apply to like vertebrates, for instance, which have comparatively much poorer fossil records than marine invertebrates, or things with hard shells anyways. And so it may appear as though like this group kind of comes out of nowhere, but even when that's the case, you can typically find them as or nested within a larger taxonomic group. So like if you say, okay, well, the earliest tyrannosaur is Guanlong from the late Jurassic of China, but tyrannosaurs kind of come out of nowhere. There's no transitional tyrannosaur linking them to the base of like Coelurosauria. Like, okay, however, Coelurosaurs predate the earliest tyrannosaurs, so that the larger group that they're a part of has members that exist stratigraphically before the tyrannosaurs appeared, which is precisely what we would expect on evolution. And then you can find theropods before the first theropod before the first coelurosaurs, and the first amniotes before the first theropods, and blah blah blah. That's consistent with evolution. That's precisely what we expect. We expect phylogeny to correlate with stratigraphy under evolution, and that's exactly what we have. So I also don't really know what fully formed means.
Yeah,
creationists use that a lot, but what does that mean?
He shows a quote there, or it's supposed to be a quote, but I don't see a source for that quote. Although even if Gould says that, like, he also knows that the term fully formed is also in quotation marks. So we're like, I think even Stephen Jay Gould is using that term facetiously, like
yes,
like, yeah.
Oh, also,
so it's like an autogenic notion of when is evolution complete? Like, it's never complete.
Yes,
yes,
right. I agree with that.
Yeah.
Vandalia 1998 for 499 says, so does the hypothesis or theory he came up with in the 1970s still hold true today, or have the many fossils we have found since then override it? No, it's still true. Like I said, there's a continuum between pure phyletic gradualism and pure punctuated equilibrium. There's a continuum between them. So you can find examples. Yeah, you can find examples to validate both ends of the spectrum, and we have. So yeah, absolutely.
It's like saying like vehicles on average either drive 5 miles an hour or 50 miles an hour, or we can find many different speeds of motion among vehicles.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. So yeah,
Kiana makes a good point as well. Does any creationist define their terms? I haven't met one.
Definitely not. We're not gonna jump into a discussion of like kinds or information, because we've already done that. But yeah, no, they desperately avoid defining their terms. Also, DM Wing for $5 says, "Oh hey, what does this button do? Thank you for the $5."
About fully formed, like what would they have formed organism look like? Like would they say, an organism with no heart? We have many organisms without a heart. Like it's you can go. It's a silly term to apply. That doesn't really apply anything.
To your point, David B22585 says, on evolution, of course, we expect to see just the left half of Protoceratops.
Yeah.
This is Protoceratosaurus, sorry. Yeah, that's exactly what we expect. Just the left half.
It's the
Then the right
dumbest.
half
It's
evolves later, just like Ray Comfort would say.
It's the dumbest argument I've ever heard. How because all of the organisms appear fully formed. You can't have an organism that isn't fully formed because it wouldn't stay alive and it wouldn't reproduce.
Yeah.
Those organisms
I think it's also
happen
this.
every once in a while because God mixes things up in the womb and it comes all out all jumbled up. So we do see those, but they don't go on to be new species. Because that's how
This is
God
also
works.
the reason why. It's also the reason why some people ask, like for example, regarding the Lansky experiment, like they will say like, oh, did it turn into a human? Like they expect it to turn
Right.
into a human. It's not fully formed yet, so and it doesn't change. So why? Anyway, moving on. I think we should move on.
Yep. All right, we're ready.
Yeah.
Okay.
They leave immediately and they don't change as long as they're here on Earth. Another quick clip from Darwin's Dilemma. Check this out.
Womp womp.
Oh, okay. They don't change as long as they live on Earth. Exactly. Because that's not how evolution works. There is a slight change in the population over time. It's not that something gets born, let's say a cow, and when it dies, it's no longer a cow. No one's proposing that.
Cows give birth to non-cows, Peter, don't you know?
Yeah, but what he just said is that a species will transform into another species while it's alive on Earth. No. No, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard a creationist say. I mean, I
Frank
watch
Turek
Kent
is
Hovind.
one of the worst.
I watch Kent Hovind. He's not that dumb.
The problem with Frank Turek is he's a wannabe everything.
Mm-hmm.
He's a wannabe biologist, a wannabe theologist, a wannabe philosopher. He's like he wants.
Does he have a degree or?
I think he actually I think he does have a degree in theology, so he's a wannabe philosopher, wannabe biologist. But like, he wants to pretend that he has a knowledge in a bunch of these subjects when he just doesn't. He has no background in them whatsoever. He's read like a handful of creationist books because he relies on like a few arguments. It's like if you watch his stuff, he uses the same arguments over and over. It's like Darwin's doubt and he like some William Lane Craig stuff, and that's about it. Like there's not a whole lot that he employs because he really doesn't know anything. And when he tries to do something on his own, it comes off insane. Like when he says epigenetics is the structure of the cell. That's insane. I don't know where he got that. I think he invented it.
It's just not right. It's not even wrong.
You're right. It's like, what? Where did you? I honestly am curious, and I'm saying this again. I know I've said it before. If anybody can figure out where he came up with that, where he read it, I want to know because it's so bafflingly stupid.
It doesn't mean anything. Like you can, it doesn't really say anything. Like you can even discuss it. There's nothing to discuss there.
Yeah, it's like, have you not heard of the cytoskeleton, sir? Yeah, or if you ask,
yes. It's epigenetics. Yes,
that's epigenetics. Yeah, like, God, I just want to be in a room with him for like 5 minutes. If I could ask him one question, it would be, "Where did you get this idea?" Nothing else.
Epigenetics.
Where did you get the idea that epigenetics is the structure of the cell? That's all I want to know. Forget everything else. All right. Anyway.
Moving on.
All right. Moving forward.
Imagine a graph, if you will, of the appearance over time of phyla. In Darwin's picture, you'd have 1, then 2, then 4 perhaps, then 8, a gradually increasing curve of the number of phyla growing over time. What you actually have in the fossil
almost
record
like nobody
is a sudden
expects that anymore, or have for years. Congratulations.
spike in
It's
the
like
number
literally-
of phyla that appear.
Nobody expects that. I'm sorry. I keep.
Oh, really.
It's just so stupid. I hate it. It's so dumb.
It's
It's so
I,
dumb.
I have two comments about it. Like,
Yeah.
we wouldn't expect it because one thing, like, according to the rules of like Linnaean taxonomy, everything alive today must belong into some phylum.
Right.
So, and because of the law, the rules of evolution, nothing can grow outside of its own taxon. So we wouldn't expect any new phyla to evolve because everything in the future will belong to the same phyla in the past. Like
Yeah.
it's kind of a tautology basically because of the arbitrary rules of Linnaean taxonomy. But
You're
another
right.
thing is,
Yeah.
Another thing is, I have seen a presentation, also a paper on what is called the push of the past and the pull of the present, where they examine a bias in the fossil record. What they basically say is very diverse groups that are alive today tend to be diverse because they have a rapid early evolution in the past. Even though the degree of diversification was random, some groups just tend to be got lucky early on, and they became diverse because of that. It's called the push of the past, and it's a bias,
Okay.
a statistical bias, and what they show is that this is exactly what we expect. We would expect that the large diverse groups that we today would describe as phyla at a very early, at a rapid diversification event in the past. So it's just what we would expect. Exactly.
Yeah. And I mean, what are the organisms that we find in the fossil record? The ones that have hard parts.
Mhm.
So the Cambrian, it is the Cambrian explosions, because there were multiple explosions at the start and the end, towards the middle of the Cambrian, is really the explosion in large part is about preservation. When the hard parts start showing up at the very end of the Ediacaran, right, that they show that there are predators. You have Claudina with boreholes in its shell from some mollusk, possibly, or early stem mollusk. And so we see these predation pressures, which then starts driving evolutionary arms races between predators and prey, as you get this ecological, filling of niches. And so if that's happening, as soon as that starts happening, that's going to drive everybody to either adapt or go extinct. So it's no surprise that in a very short time period, we see a whole bunch of shelled organisms all kind of appearing at once. That's not at all surprising. Anyway, the idea that we should just expect the phyla to gradually appear is wrong. There's no reason, and we've known this for what 50 years now. No one's expected that for 50 years to just find a gradual fossil record of the phyla, appearing. What we do find, however, is you find in the Cambrian lots of stem fossils,
Right.
and then later crown fossils. So with the arthropods, you find
And before that, you also find something that cannot be placed in any particular phylum, but you can say oh, this is an ecdysozoan properly, perhaps closer to an annelid or maybe an arthropod or something, but at least an ecdysozoan. Or you can find something like a bilaterian, like Kimberella, oh, it's definitely a bilaterian, but is it more closely related to mollusks maybe, or maybe something else? You get something like that further back even.
Yeah. And so it's like we have a series of radiations. You have kind of a radiation of stem animals at the start of the Ediacaran.
Mm-hmm.
Then towards sort of the middle to end, you have a radiation of stem bilaterians.
Right.
And then you get
worms,
crown bilaterians.
Basically,
yeah. Basically, you just start getting lots of wormy things and the bath mat looking, Dickinsonia and some other weird little things, and then you get your crown bilaterians as we just start crossing over into the Cambrian. Then you get a big radiation of bilaterian phyla, but mostly stem members of those bilaterian phyla. So,
Right.
for instance, with arthropods, you're right, you find like wormy things, which are maybe ecdysozoans in the late Ediacaran, like Eulingia. And then as you cross into the Cambrian, you have a bunch of these armored worms called lobopods, as well as bivalved arthropods, in quotes, which are stem arthropods. You also get guys like Anomalocaris and Opabinia, which are also stem arthropods, also appearing in the early to middle Cambrian. And then you get the crown arthropods late in the or crown members of the classes late in the Cambrian. Go ahead.
It's also like if you pick any Cambrian animal, like I pick anyone, I will bet that no creationist would say that this is the same kind as anything that lives today. Like, or that would be crazy if they would say yes, it's the same kind. It's like
says that, yeah.
This like Opabinia is the same kind as a spider, or
right.
Right.
Meyer likes to say the representatives of the modern phyla were in the Cambrian. Okay, so Hycoichthyes is our ancestor. You're okay with that? All right.
It's so strange. Like they use phyla, of course, as the Linnaean term, but what does that term mean to them? Like, what does it mean to them when they say that?
Right.
Like, is there any relationship that they acknowledge, or it's strange?
Yeah, they don't tell you. Again, another example of they don't define terms.
Yeah.
Right. Anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
Can I address one thing? We have someone in the live chat who has managed to activate their only brain cell for just this live stream, apparently. They asked why didn't we evolve wings, and I can explain that because I run this show, and in order to run it, I'm using a remote. If I had wings, I wouldn't be able to use my remote unless it came with an index feather. Wanted to throw that out.
Yeah.
And if you keep talking about the particular virus in the chat, I'll be more than happy to kick you out because we're not allowing you to put shit in the chat here that gets our video taken down.
Yep. If you start spreading COVID conspiracy theories, you're booted. Don't care. You boot. All right.
I think the basic answer for why we don't have wings is evolutionary constraints. But and again, moving on.
Okay.
Yep.
Here during the Cambrian, and then a few that trickle in across the rest of geologic time. This kind of discontinuity is radically at odds with the Darwinian picture of the history of life. The pattern we see is
pause for a moment.
The major body.
Why is it that you have this sort of big bump at the beginning, but then a few later on? And why is it some phyla don't have fossil records at all? Where are the Gnathostomulida of the fossil record? Where'd they go? Why is it rotifers show up in the Eocene? What's up with that? Meyer doesn't ever talk about that. Never talks about it. He says, "Oh, well, you know, the what is it called? The artifact hypothesis doesn't explain the Cambrian explosion." And to an extent, that's true. But at the same time, it does explain why we don't find certain organisms in the fossil record, or very few types of certain organisms. And Meyer just doesn't ever really talk about it. It just never gets brought up. Why do flatworms not appear until the Jurassic? Were flatworms created in the Jurassic period? I don't think they believe that. Honestly, if I'm being spicy, I'm willing to bet that a lot of the intelligent design folks are just covert creationists, like young Earth creationists, but that's just me. Anyway, moving on.
Plans present at the beginning, and that the organisms that we know today fall into one or another of those major body plans. They don't gradually increase over.
Hold on. Did he say those plans were at the beginning? Did I hear that correctly?
That's what he said. The body plans were there at the beginning.
I thought I heard him say that. Okay.
Yeah.
Because is he insinuating, or explicitly stating, I guess, that the Cambrian was the start of evolution? Is that what he's saying? That's what he has to mean. Except for like sponges and cnidarians, which appeared in the Precambrian, but whatever. Go ahead.
There's another term, undefined. There's also a funny thing about body plan. Like body plan is often defined as it's the shared characteristics of a phyla or of a phylum. But then you ask, how is a phylum defined? Oh, it's defined as the body plan. It's
right.
It's not. And that's one of the arbitrary things of Linnaean taxonomy that we should abandon. But of course, there is also some hangover that is often still used today. But
yeah, that's true. Yep, the taxonomic ranks are arbitrary. We got to get over it, folks.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, moving on.
I like the dramatic music in the videos that they put up. It makes it all so believable what they say.
I mean, the only thing aside from that, the only thing that's giving me life in this video is like Frank being mad that Greg Kokel keeps commenting.
Yeah, that has to be the funniest part.
That's
of
like
the video.
My favorite side plot.
Yeah. Yeah. If you haven't noticed it, if this is your first visit here, the moment Kokel steps in, watch Turek's facial expression. It says everything.
He gets like so mad. It's the funniest thing. Anyway,
but that guy just said like that there's no thing that evolved a new body plan. But again, take any Cambrian arthropod and then pick an insect which has wings, but nothing in the Cambrian has such wings. And then would they admit that wings are nothing new in the sense of body plans?
Let me throw out something stupid, because we currently have penguins that have wings, but they're not wings, they're flippers. Isn't that a new body plan?
Right, they've been accepted.
Yeah. Shouldn't you consider that as a new body plan, because it's using its wings as flippers?
That's true. It is accepted them. Yeah, Nestle, your point about the body plan is very well taken. And we discussed this in the Meyer video on Professor Dave's channel. For anyone who hasn't seen it, if you haven't, go watch it. But if you haven't seen it yet, Meyer talks about how you have the origin of body plans in the Cambrian, but then he also talks about like these problems in novelty, just new things coming out of nowhere, like with the first insects. It's like, well, hold on a second. Are insects a separate creation from the other arthropods? God like created arthropods in the late Precambrian, and then comes along in like the Silurian or whatever, and is like, you know what? I think I'll make insects now. Is that what happened?
Yeah. It's like everything that appeared in the Cambrian remains essentially the same. And then on the other hand, they will say like, oh, where do you get the first wings? Where do you get the first mammals and such?
Right.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, Steve Meyer said that the first mammals appeared in the Eocene. Now, I had a conversation with Jonathan McClatchy, who's another apologist. I had a conversation with him on Twitter about this, because I posted that video and I said, look, Meyer said the first mammals appeared in the Eocene. That's bonkers stupid. And McClatchy responds, well, what he meant was the first crown mammals. That's still wrong. The first crown mammals appeared in the Jurassic.
I would think he probably thinks that mammals is a synonym of placental mammals, and even then he would still be wrong.
He's still wrong, because you have a Jeremiah. Well, it's a stem
stem placenta probably, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, to say, well, hold on, I'm trying to think. Do we have any? Yes, Pertungulatum. Pertungulatum is a crown placental who live at like the tail end of the Cretaceous.
What is its taxonomy closest?
I think it's close to the ungulate. It's like a stem ungulate or something like that.
Oh, really? I've never heard about that.
Purgatorius. Purgatorius also lived at the tail end of the Cretaceous.
Oh, right, yes. And that's perhaps close to primates, or maybe
probably close to primates.
Acanthe, yes,
something like that.
Yeah.
And McClatchy's response was, he meant he meant the crown members of the orders, which is still wrong. Still wrong. Like, because there are crown like carnivorans in the Paleocene. So it's like, no, man, that's still wrong. You're still dumb.
It's funny that you can redefine like, I meant this, and then they're still wrong. I meant that. They're still wrong.
What if he meant to say this? Well, that's great if he meant to say it, but he didn't say it. It's like, I'm sorry, but he just didn't say that. If he meant to say it, then he should publish a correction, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, all right, let's keep going.
So the fossil record does not support gradualism. It does not support Darwinism. You saw the spike there? I mean, that's how, according to the fossil record, these creatures have come into existence, just in spikes. The big spike, the Cambrian explosion, and then a couple of little spikes later on. But not this sort of progression from a few to many. We'll stay with Gould here, who said the extreme...
Couple of little spikes, like flowering plants in the Cretaceous. we don't talk about plants, do we, Turek?
No. Evolutionists don't talk about plants. Remember?
Yeah. Just little spikes. Just little spikes.
But also, I have to wonder, like, one of those spikes is probably, like, those spikes probably represent when the different phyla appear in the fossil record. So, like, for reference, I think it's 15 phyla appear in the Cambrian. It's like 3 or 4 in the Ediacaran, 15 in the Cambrian. Then it's kind of spread out after that. I think Bryozoan. No, Bryozoans got pulled into the Cambrian. That's right.
Yeah.
So, does that mean God just created flatworms in the Jurassic? Is that what that means? God said,
just little spike. Just a little
time for
spike.
Some platy helmets. Here you go.
Rarity of the transitional forms in the fossil record persists as the trade secret of paleontology. The evolutionary trees that adorn our textbooks have data only at the tips and nodes of their branches. The rest is inference, however reasonable, not the evidence of fossils.
Okay, pause.
Let's go
pause.
back.
There's another quote.
Okay, this is another favorite quote mine of creationists. I happen to know, actually, what this is from. This is from an essay Gould was writing about concerning phyletic gradualism and punctuated equilibrium. So what? Okay, that face Turek is making is disturbing. But what what Gould is talking about,
I lost everything you said because of that face. I mean, sorry.
What Gould was talking about is the evidence of species to species transitions in the fossil record. And it's true that for a lot of organisms, like vertebrates, plants, things like that, we don't have these. What we have is these much sketchier, spottier fossil records, and it's true for a lot of organisms. And so the evidence that you have these species to species transitions just isn't there. Does that mean they weren't undergoing speciation events? No, it doesn't. Obviously, that it's just because the fossil record is very poor for a lot of organisms. But also Gould wrote a quote later. He said, "It is infuriating to be misquoted time and again by creationists through stupidity or ignorance. I do not know, as saying that the fossil record has no transitional fossils. It actually has very many."
And it's said that it is continuous even after his death. It's
yep.
Really sad.
Yeah, this is just a lie. Like, it's just a lie. this idea that when he's saying this, that he is intending to say there are no transitional fossils. He's not. He explicitly talks about how there are transitional fossils for like linking most like families and orders together.
Yes.
But
or
when
like
you try to
large scale, like transitional tetrapods, or maybe birds, maybe not during his time, because of course, like when he, like I don't know when he made that comment, probably like in somewhere in the 1980s or so, I don't know,
90s, something like that.
I don't know, like, of course, that's way before the many fossils that we have right now. But even still, we still had some fossils back then. So again, his comment, as you said to yourself, his comment was regarding species to species transitions, which was rare.
Right. The punctuated equilibrium and phyletic gradualism are about speciation.
Yes.
They're not about evolution broadly, although you can use them to characterize evolution broadly. But these two modes are mostly used to talk about speciation events.
Right.
For Gould and Eldridge with punctuated equilibrium, you have a small founder population, typically moving to a new area, which then undergoes rapid speciation, and then once they enter equilibrium with their environment, they attain morphological stasis.
Right.
And that's punctuated equilibrium.
Yeah.
And again,
and if you move to large scale, then the concept of stasis gets very muddy, because like even in the favorite examples of like the coelacanths, there is still a lot of evolution going on there. So you cannot say that lineage had stasis, because there is still a lot of change to be had there. Yeah.
The funny thing about the coelacanths is the modern genus Latimeria is Cenozoic in age.
Right.
It didn't live in the Mesozoic, so they've definitely undergone evolution. But you're right; it gets very muddy, and living fossil in general is not a good term. Researchers, some have opted to use a term called stabilimorph, which is basically if a genus has existed longer than a mass extinction event. But again, even that's not totally objective, because what's a genus?
Yeah, exactly. Depends. So it kicks the can down the road every time. Like it's and eventually you will get to the equivalent of the species problem, and then you have to define what a species is, or what. Yeah, it gets muddy.
Yep, and they really don't care. Of course, they don't care about the nuance. Turek doesn't care about any of that. He's just trying to push his apologetics agenda. So whatever.
Mm-hmm. Moving on.
Yep.
To National Geographic. I can't believe they put this in here, but this is literally.
We should have like a drink counter for every time creationists point to National Geographic.
Here's what it says: illuminating but spotty, the fossil record is like a film of evolution from which 999 of every 1,000 frames have been lost on the cutting room floor.
That is true.
Can you believe that? Can you imagine?
Probably an underestimate.
And they show you one frame of every 1,000. First of all, the movie's 12 seconds long. Do you walk out of there going, man, that was great. I got the plot. You would go, what? Here's my question. What would the fossil record look like if intelligent design is true? What would it look like?
Like it does.
Wait, is he actually going to give us some criteria?
Now, you
he's
could
not.
say
He's not going to give us
every
criteria.
1,000 might give you
Okay, I was actually excited for a second there, because creationists and ideas never give criteria for what they expect. Never, ever, never, ever. Why? Because if they did, they could be potentially falsified. So I got very excited there when Frank said, you know what I would expect? It's like, tell us what you expect, Frank. What do you expect? We really want to know.
They will say just basically, I will expect exactly what we are observing.
Right.
Yeah, but in retrospect, basically, like it's a post hoc prediction.
And he's not going to say anything specific about it, right? He's not going to say something like, we expect phylogeny and stratigraphy to broadly match, right?
Mm-hmm.
That would be a prediction of evolution. We should expect phylogeny and stratigraphy to broadly match, and they do. And the further you go back in time, the more and more clades converge. that's a prediction of evolution.
Like a good prediction would be like, oh, if you believe it, that every animal was basically made at the same time, then you would expect rabbits in the Cambrian. That was one of the famous examples. Like, but why don't we see those?
Right.
Why do we see mostly stem groups early on? Like, why? There is no reason to be had from the ID side.
I expect flatworms to show up in the Jurassic. Why? Why do you expect that? Or rotifers to show up in the Eocene? Like, what? Why is that your expectation, Frank? Why? Tell us why, please. We are dying to know.
I have a hypothesis.
Shoot.
Flatworms were created in the beginning because, according to the Bible, the Earth is flat, so it needed flat animals. I mean, it's a hypothesis. I did ask our dear friend Jonathan Sarfati, because he started bickering about this about Piltdown Man, and that it went on so long before it was exposed. And I told him, it took a little while before it was exposed completely, except it was never accepted, which is a difference. And I asked him, can you name me one young Earth creationist who has ever exposed an error in any evidence for evolution? Can you name me one? And he completely forgot about that question.
Not surprising.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know it. It's Kiana is right here. You should know better than to get excited, Jackson. We covered this earlier in the stream. Yeah.
You'll always be disappointed.
Yes.
So better not.
Yeah, very true.
It's a quote from Spider-Man. Like, what did she say again? From without expectations, you won't be disappointed, or something.
Or
like that. Yeah.
Bo Burnham says, "Lower your expectations." You know, he's got a whole song about it. So, you know, if you enter with very low expectations, you're either pleasantly surprised or correct. So there's that. All right. Anyway.
Continue.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Of progression, if you fill in the gaps in your mind, right? Or, and how are they filling in the gaps? They're filling in the gaps because we look like, say, other primates, and they're assuming that there are transitions.
Wait, he's made the jump from phylum to like hominini?
Yes.
Because of course humans are created separately. That was the end goal. That was always the end goal.
Yeah.
He went. The Cambrian phyla were created, therefore we are separate from the other primates. Yep.
Can I point out one thing? If humans didn't evolve from primates, Mr. Frank Turek, why are you standing like this?
We're all monkeys.
I mean,
return to monkey.
The pauses on this video keep getting better and better, but that is
true.
That is a chimpanzee pose if I've ever seen one. Just saying. Okay, let's continue.
Question. They're assuming what they're trying to prove.
Nope.
In fact, it's been said elsewhere, Jonathan Wells makes this point, you cannot make,
another
and
creationist.
Michael Denton does too, you cannot make ancestral relationships or determine ancestral relationships from fossils anyway.
I love it how, according to him, this is important that it has been said elsewhere. He's using
said
that
by two creationists.
Yes, but it has been said elsewhere. So now that's a done deal. If it has been said elsewhere, it has to be true.
I knew a guy who said it once. So.
Yeah.
All you know that it died. You cannot tell it. So it's as any descendants.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's my best Genthoven impression.
I think it's very good. It's
actually
well
pretty good, Neslik.
Yeah.
Pretty good. Okay, continue.
Yeah. Also, well, speaking of Hoven, just one point. If you haven't watched Paulogia's expose on Kent, then you should, because however bad you think he is, he's worse.
Yeah.
he's worse. That's all I can say. You'll
and
have to watch it yourself.
Another must-watch is, and this is not just because he's a great guy and I like him very much, McKenna Mitchell did a documentary on Kent Hovind and came up with stuff that none of us ever heard of. He came up with pictures no one can find on the internet. That's called The Weakness of Kent Hovind. That is a must-watch as well. And I'm not saying that Hovind does things that that aren't that good, but he did get another strike on his channel. He did get another strike on his channel and hasn't been able to live stream for a week.
It's whatever, even if Hovind himself is not doing things, he surrounds himself with people who do things. Mm-hmm. So there's only so long you can run in a crowd before it turns out you've also done that stuff. Anyway, back to the show.
There's a reason he has a dinosaur adventure park aimed at kids. Let's keep it at that.
Yep. Okay. Anyway, keep going. Back to the show.
You can't. 99%, Denton makes this point, 99% of what we know about a biological creature is in its soft tissue. It's not in its fossil remains. And so you can't even make ancestral connections by the fossil record. But even when they try, they're out of ammunition, intellectual ammunition. Here's macroevolutionary theory. Watch this. Here's the true picture.
That's not the true picture. It's not. It's a very, very oversimplified picture. And it's the one that creationists always pick because they want to ridicule common ancestry. So that is why
is there a bee up there with the monkeys?
Because
can you move back a bit when the branches are shown? Can you, Peter?
Hold on. Wrong button.
Just like a second back.
Probably
like a half a second back or something.
Hold on.
Watch this.
Okay, right
pause.
Okay, is that a bird? Oh, okay, hold on. There's a bat with Archaeopteryx and a pterosaur. There's a bee with an eagle. Kangaroos, which are marsupials, are closer to primates than
the horses.
Placentals are lions, and house cats are more closely related to crocodiles and lizards. Oh my god!
And apparently we descended from starfish.
Yes,
everything descended from.
Oh my god! This is horrendous. This is like someone who doesn't know anything about evolution. Just
I would believe
threw a bunch of pictures on there.
I would believe that Turek made this himself, like you originally made him this self.
I wouldn't be surprised, honestly. Yeah.
Like everything is wrong, basically, almost everything is wrong. It has Archaeopteryx. I think Archaeopteryx is closer to the Brontosaur or the.
Oh, I think you're right. You're right. Oh my gosh, it's so bad. It's like
wait. Like the eagle is closer to the bee, and Archaeopteryx is closer to the sauropod.
You know what's funny about this? It's like it's almost a these things are almost arranged stratigraphically. I wonder if whoever made this, maybe it was Turek, I don't know. Whoever made this, knows broadly, when mammals and dinosaurs appeared and amphibians and stuff appeared in the fossil record, and he has a sort of vague idea of that, and then just sort of connected a bunch of animals with branches.
I think I know where this picture came from. Jackson, do you remember? Do you remember the litmus test that Kent Hovind always does? A 5-year-old can point it out. He's probably commissioned one of those 5-year-olds to make this.
You're probably right.
Yeah.
Monkey for Banana says this is, without a doubt, the worst phylogeny that I have ever seen.
It is.
You are correct.
I agree.
You are correct. Good lord. Oh my god, it's awful.
I also
the one fish on there is a catfish. It's a Corydora.
Yeah.
I also like the name macroevolution theory. Is there such a thing?
No. It's not. It's not a macroevolution. Is not a theory. It is just a method. It's not even really a method. It's just it's a description of how evolution proceeds. That's it. Like, it's not a separate mechanism from microevolution. It's not a mechanism at all. It's just a descriptor.
It's the difference in scale, basically.
Right.
Yeah. Although I have seen arguments for that there are different mechanisms that operate at the larger scale, like punctuated equilibrium is a mechanism that operates at the macroevolution scale and not within the.
Well, I wouldn't say it. Yeah. Well, so I wouldn't say it's a mechanism. I'd again describe it as like a trend.
Process.
Yeah, like a process, a trend. I guess you could say species selection would be a process that operates on this as opposed to like population. So okay, maybe that, but good God. Oh, it's so bad. It's so bad. Anyway.
Maybe we need to get this phylogeny out of the way.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Here's the true picture. Now, there aren't missing links, there's a missing chain. If I have a link in New York, a link in Chicago, and a link in LA, do I have a missing chain or missing links? I have a missing chain. There's no chain there.
The basic body plan of the arthropod phylum has a segmented torso.
No. Hold on a second.
Wait a
second. He keeps jumping back and forth between saying the Cambrian phyla, saying, okay, well, the Cambrian phyla, the Cambrian is when the phyla appeared. And then he jumps back to like species being separate from each other or orders or what have you, and says, okay, these were also created separately? Like, pick a lane. You can't on the one hand make a whole argument about like Pikaia, is or Hycoichthys or whatever is the first chordate, and then I think Pikaia is a cephalochordate or something. Hycoichthys is one of the first chordates, or Metasporina or something, and then like jump to the Cenozoic and be like, and then God created horses? Well, then why are you talking about the Cambrian? Are you implying that God creates every species? Where is God doing the creating? Is it like the species level, the genus, the order? Because clearly you think it's below the phylum if you're saying that humans and dinosaurs aren't related, because those are two classes. So like, there's no consistency here. There's no consistency. I don't know. It just frustrates me that this is so dumb. It's so dumb. Anyway, continuing on.
Jointed legs, and an exoskeleton, all of which arose suddenly at the beginning of the Cambrian explosion. And today we still see the continuity of this original plan, this foundational idea, in over 1 million species of animals.
Okay, so pause. Okay, so we're back to the phylum is like the created kind. Which is it, Turek? Is it the phylum or is it something lower? Pick one. Stop bouncing back and forth. Be consistent.
It was showing a spider and I think a cockroach or something, and also now a lobster or the shrimp.
Yes.
How do we call it again? This
peacock shrimp.
Yeah.
Oh wait, is this the peacock shrimp? Anyway, yeah, I think
this is the mantis shrimp. Yeah. Are they saying that it's all? Are they all related?
Yeah.
What are they saying?
It's like, please be consistent. Please, we cannot follow the argument. It's like everything. It's what is it? RJ? What is it? RJ calls it? I think it's no cousins. I think is what he calls it. It's basically everything is not related, because if we say anything is related, then that starts bringing in like other organisms, and then saying things are related starts getting hard. And so it's like, I think honestly Turek is dumb enough that he just doesn't know like the difference. Like he thinks the difference between humans and horses is equivalent to the difference between spiders and mantis shrimp. I really do think that.
Again, humans are definitely not apes. They are completely different.
Yes.
But all arthropods, they are about the same. Yeah, about pretty much.
Yeah. Oh, there's just no consistency to this argument. Anyway, all right, keep going.
This top-down pattern looks nothing like the predictions of Darwin's theory.
Darwin's theory is that there's a tree of life where you have one organism diverging
Another
into many
creationist.
other organisms and big differences appearing at the top. What we really
like
see
difference between
is
spiders
from
and
here up.
insects.
So, like,
This does not exist in the fossil record. If I
so
were
sheer
using a
curiosity,
botanical illustration,
Jonathan Wells. Sheer curiosity. Are you saying that there aren't like some very primitive lobopods and bivalve arthropods at the start of the Cambrian, and then later you have like crown arthropods? Are you saying that's not the way it happened? Because it kind of is, and that also kind of matches.
And then even later, you have spiders, chelicerates, and more
right,
more insects and such. Yeah, it's
right.
Like he's saying like no large differences occur later, but then he would say that. Yeah, are there no differences between an insect and a spider? Like it's ridiculous.
I can't think of any group in which that just isn't the case. Think about vertebrates again, chordates. What are the first chordates? Like Hycoichthyes, Metaspergina, these little wormy fish guys.
Yeah,
these are the first.
Like they didn't even have an internal skeleton yet.
Right.
It's not even
Right. So the very first things we have are these little wormy guys with no internal skeletons. Shortly thereafter, by the end of the Cambrian, start of the Ordovician, you get the first fish, the actual fish.
Yeah.
With internal skeletons.
Also important to note is that the in vertebrates the skeleton, or at least the mineralized skeleton, started out on the outside. Like the earliest fish had a shell on the outside, and only later it became ossified on the inside. Yeah.
Right. And so you have these jawless armored fish at first, and then these guys evolve into a bunch of different groups, some of them with jaws. And then from that, you get the cartilaginous fish, and you also get the ray fin and the lobe fin fish. And then from the in the Devonian. And then from the lobe fin fish, you get
more than 100 million. Like how many millions of years after the Cambrian is that?
Oh, that's like like 200 or so million years later. Yeah.
Oh, just a few. No big deal.
At least 100 million years. Yeah. So a long time.
Yeah.
And then, 100 million years later or so, you get these radiations of different fish. Then within the lobe fin fish, you get another radiation of different lobe fin fish like coelacanths, lungfish, and the very first like stem tetrapods. And then from that, you have another radiation. Like that's what we expect, and that's what we see. We see stratigraphy correlating with phylogeny. Yeah. That's exactly what we expect.
In the Carboniferous, we have a radiation of tetrapods on the land, like on land. Yeah.
Yep. And then on and on and on and on and on, all the way up to today. It's like this is what we expect to see. When they say we don't see this kind of stuff, they're just lying. It's at the point where like I don't feel comfortable saying they're just misinformed. They're just lying. They are professional liars. Their paycheck depends on lying to you about this. All right, moving on.
I do want to point out, Cameron Hall brought it up. He said, I've heard a creationist say Noah only brought 2 eukaryotic cells on the ark. That was our good friend Sal Cordova in a debate with Arnra. He said that Noah only brought cells. I'm not even kidding.
Alrighty, moving on.
Okay.
It would be a lawn with separate blades of grass sprouting independently of each other. And those would be the phyla. Now within each phylum, there is subsequent diversification. But even there,
wait a second, there is?
I don't see the branches.
Wait a second, you don't see the branches, but there is diversification? How could you say that? How could you have it both ways?
Can you play more? Maybe it was like going further, like
okay, more. Yeah, go ahead.
Connecting that would make them a tree of life.
Darwin.
Okay, he's saying that all he's saying that but the branches below don't connect, but of course they do. They connect on below.
Yeah.
And we also see that, as we mentioned before, we also see that in the Diacoron with the earliest bilaterians and such. So they do connect.
Why is it that we have the earliest bilaterian, like stem bilaterians before crown bilaterians? Why do we find stem animals before crown animals? Why is this the case? Because evolution is true.
What was the designer thinking about Charnia? What was he thinking?
He said, you know what, you metazoans, but I'm just going to wipe them out like immediately after. Yep. All right, moving on.
Of a deep dilemma. The fossil record showed him one thing, his theory told him something else. He comes to an impasse at this point, and he says, if this pattern holds, it is a genuine argument against my view. And I think 150 years later, we've added a great deal more detail to the picture, but I think the basic problem is still unsolved.
I would argue that you don't think at all, actually. My opinion.
What is the implication of this? Richard Dawkins will tell us. Here it is.
That's it? That's the whole quote? That could mean literally anything.
Without gradualness, we are back to a miracle. That's why he went after Stephen Jay Gould, because Stephen Jay Gould came up with the punctuated equilibria theory, which said that evolution took these jumps. He had no mechanism by which he could show evidence for this, but he just said it must be. Why?
That's
because
also
philosophically, he's already decided evolution's true.
Pause for a moment. Wasn't Dawkins against PE, or was he? Or,
he was, yes. He wrote a whole chapter about it in, what is it? The Blind Watchmaker. Like punctuationism or something like that.
So we can just say that Dawkins was wrong, and there it is. That's moving on.
I mean, Dawkins is wrong about several things. Dawkins writes that like epigenetics is neo-Lamarckism. It was recent too. It was in Greatest Show on Earth. He's like every few decades, neo-Lamarckism reappears. It's epigenetics this time. It's like, dude, what? What are you talking about?
Epigenetics was first appeared like Waddington's landscape, like in the process of development. That's how epigenetics first came to in science. Anyway, it's just it's not any way related to Lamarck.
Yeah, no, it's not at all. But also, not only is it not related to Lamarck at all, but also, the mechanism for punctuated equilibrium is not any different than gradualism. It's just the time scale on which speciation is occurring is different. Like that's the difference.
And also punctuated equilibrium is still gradual, especially if you're talking about creationist timescales or young Earth creationist timescales.
I mean, tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands, if not a few million years, is pretty gradual.
Yeah,
that's pretty gradual. So, anyway, moving on.
So evolution wasn't gradual in his view. It took these hopeful monster jumps somehow. No evidence for this.
That's not what that is at all. Why would you say that? That's not even what that is. Hopeful monster was Goldsmith in the 1940s. You freaking idiot.
Details.
Why does he keep talking? He keeps speaking, and he only says stupid things. Okay, you're right. Details. You mean like explain the details of?
Oh no, I was just like joking. Like it's just details, Jackson.
You're right. It's just details. You're right. My bad. That's. Oh my gosh! It makes me so mad. He's so dumb. Okay, I'm sorry. Keep going.
Philosophy, or assuming his philosophy before he looks at the evidence, and therefore comes up with that.
You're an
Last thing from
apologist.
Dawkins
Stop
here.
talking about people assuming things.
We already read this earlier. He does have a philosophical commitment to materialism and
Cool. Don't care.
reductionism, which, again, means he's ruling out intelligence beforehand. He's begging the question. He's assuming what he's trying to prove, and he is falling right into what Einstein said, that unfortunately the man of science is a poor philosopher. All right.
Oh,
cool.
Let's
don't
go
care.
back to Flew, who famously said, follow the evidence where
Again,
it leads. Who is Anthony Flew?
don't-
He was the philosophical atheist of the last century, probably the most prominent one, who wrote
All right,
the article for
All right, let's
atheism.
talk about this. So, Anthony Flew is someone who gets brought up a lot by theists, but from what I can tell, like no one outside of theistic circles ever heard of him, because they're always calling him like the world's most famous atheist. Never heard of him, like ever. And it seems most like philosophers I've talked to who are also atheists have also not heard of him, at least before creationists started spreading his story around. What appears to have happened is a dude who, was an atheist in his like 80s, got convinced by a theistic argument and became like agnostic or like a sort of general theist. And
wasn't he suffering from dementia at the time and got convinced because he
something
saw a
like,
waterfall?
I mean, he's in his 80s.
Yeah.
He's in his 80s, right? It's like your best story is a dude who didn't buy your claims until he was dementia riddled in his 80s.
Yeah.
And you think that's a flex?
Until he had a problem with his brain functions, that's when he became a creationist. Doesn't that tell you something?
I became a creationist. I think he just became like a deist.
I will predict that Turek will bring up Fred Hoyle next. I will predict.
Yeah, as Dapper says, that's a drink trigger if you predict and you're right. So let's find out.
In the Encyclopedia of Philosophy, and in 2005 became kind of a theist, maybe a deist, but he rejected atheism because of the DNA argument, basically intelligent design. And he always said, even when he was an atheist, we got to follow the evidence where it leads. Where does it lead? It appears to lead back to an intelligent designer. Does science say that? No, scientists
like vague
say that.
deism?
That's what I'm saying. I
So
think that's what
Turek,
the
you're not a
evidence
Christian
shows.
anymore? I mean, Turek isn't a Christian anymore, I guess. He said it leads to vague deism, right? So, okay. Guess we're all deists now. Sorry, resurrection's out the door.
In all fairness, according to Frank Turek, anything is better than being an atheist. So if you're a deist, at least you're part of his club.
I guess that's true.
The only people who are not part of his club are atheists because they don't believe in God because they just want to sin. That's it.
Yep.
And it's also a thing, although it's a bit unrelated to the evolution stuff, but it's I think most philosophical debates that like, for example, William Lane Craig has, like he never argues for Christianity specifically. He always argues for a vague theistic notion of God. Like, it's always that.
That couldn't be because it's really hard to argue for the Christian God if you have a Bible handy. Because all of the errors in the Bible, that's pretty much enough to rule out the Christian God. And all of the contradictions in how he's described and his attributes rules him out. That's why they don't want to argue that, especially not in philosophical debates.
Yeah. I do think it's interesting, however, that most philosophers are atheists.
Right.
That's a fun little fact for you. So, anyway.
I wonder for how long that has been. Like, when did it switch? Like,
I don't know.
I would imagine that. Yeah, I would imagine that the early philosophers were mostly theist, right? Like,
I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure, but yeah, I don't know. That's a good question.
It's also kind of a problem if you have a religion that will literally kill you in the most horrific ways possible. I think you would just claim to adhere to that particular religion in order to, I don't know, stay alive?
My guess is that the switch happens also around the same time that science progressed a bit, and we learn more about nature, and we realized, like, oh, assuming magic is the answer, then it doesn't really work. So the argument for ignorance is a fallacy, and therefore we cannot really justify this. So
yeah, that's true.
That's my naive guess. So don't quote me on that.
Yeah, I bet you're right though. I mean, it's been the number of. I mean, if you look at like the polls, people they're the people who subscribe to atheism has definitely risen within the past like few decades. It's been on the rise for past several decades. Alrighty, moving on.
Yeah, I could be wrong. Here's the big so what. Last thing. Richard Lalonde, atheist, teaches at Harvard. He's an atheist, a Marxist, a Darwinist, all the ists, okay? In 1997, he had a very honest moment when he wrote in the New York Times Review of Books why
I bet I can guess the quote.
Colleagues don't believe in miracles.
It is this quote.
He said, it's not that the methods and institutions of science somehow compel us to accept a material explanation of the phenomenal world, but on the contrary, that we are forced by our a priori, meaning our prior adherence to material causes, to create an apparatus of investigation and a set of concepts that produce material explanations, no matter how counterintuitive, no matter how mystifying to the uninitiated. Moreover, that materialism is absolute, for we cannot allow a divine foot in the door.
So two things about this. For one, I think he's being a bit hyperbolic. Obviously, this is from like an essay that he's writing. I think he's being a bit hyperbolic in that regard, but also this is sort of speaking to the nature of science as a whole and how science works. And actually, we may have a video coming out about this in the near future, so stay tuned.
It's just the reason why scientists have to assume there is there is a potential natural explanation. It's not because there is it's not because there's a doctrinal obligation to deny anything else. It's just that is the only answer we can test and investigate with our methods.
If you have a proton, for instance, and it moves in some fashion, how could you ever tell that fashion was caused by God? That the proton moved because a supernatural force caused it to move in that particular way. How? What test could you devise to determine that? You can't. There's really no test you can do. The best you can say is, we don't know how it did this. But we can never assign supernatural as the reason. And you can say, well, okay, what if it's a very improbable trend? Well, still, there's no degree of improbability that necessitates supernatural influence, right?
If you calculate the likelihood of you being born with the genetic recombination of your parents' DNA, the numbers are staggering. Like every one of us won the biggest lottery of our lives, basically, when we were born. Does that mean that of course many people will say that birth is a miracle, so it's but,
right.
But there is improbable things happen all the time. It's just it's only in hindsight that we can say, it's very improbable. So surprise, surprise. But we never can.
Right. There's no way scientifically to investigate the supernatural. The most we can say is, here's the rules that we are aware of based on our experiments and observations of the natural world. And this is what we expect given those. But should we be wrong about something, that doesn't automatically mean it was God. It means we have to amend how we think about the world and about natural causes. And if we're wrong again, then we change it again. Like science updates, it's tentative. There's no point at which you can say, this is the thing that there can never be an explanation for. because that's not how science works. We can't say that in science. You can't assert there is no explanation for something.
It's not like when there is no known natural explanation, that doesn't automatically give any credence to the supernatural alternative, because you have to propose an alternative to be with merit to be an alternative, and just saying, oh, it's magic. That's nothing that we can consider.
Yep.
All right. Moving on.
Alrighty. Yep.
Realism is absolute. We can't allow God in. Why not? Why can't they allow God in? Well, if God gets in, no longer are they seen as the new priests who dispense truth to the general public. No longer will they be able to get grant money from the major institutions and from the United States.
That's not true.
No longer will they be seen as buddies with their materialistic colleagues. If they let God in.
Yep. It's just a conspiracy. That's what it is.
They're going to have to bow their knee to a creator, because God brings with him moral restraints.
Pause a moment. Even though, as you mentioned before, even though that most scientists are non-believers, there are still quite a few scientists who are believers. And are they getting fired? No, they're not.
They're part of the conspiracy.
It's also pretty telling.
They got a deal. Like, oh, you can keep your religion as long as you.
It's also pretty telling that he will go to a god immediately, because that's not even, if I'm correct, that's not even what the quote says. But if you're doing science and anywhere in your experiment you fill in, and here comes magic and does this, then you don't have an explanation. That is not doing science, because what magic? How magic? That it has no place in science. We need to explain things so we can check it. And magic is not an explanation. Magic is also not a mechanism.
You're right. How did it happen? Magic. It's like that meme. I think you need to insert a miracle in step 4 or something like that. You know?
Yes.
Or no. The picture, the board says like miracle, and the guy says, I think you need to be more explicit in step 4.
Yeah. There's also this tiny clue that science explores the natural world, not the supernatural. The natural world might be a clue as to why supernatural things aren't included in science, because it's not what it's about. Maybe, I don't know. Just a guess.
Yeah. Even if you take something that seems very low probability, like you mix sodium hydroxide and hydrochloric acid in like a flask, and we know exactly how this reaction is going to go, but instead of when you mix them they turn into gold, right? Like that's highly improbable.
Mm-hmm.
It's not zero. The probability of that happening isn't zero, but it is very, 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 very low. But even if that were to happen, could we say beyond the shadow of a doubt that God did that? No. Even if it's true that God did do that, we would have to know how God interacted with the molecules in such a way as to cause this. And you'd be the first. There's just no way.
Right.
All right. I think we're ready.
Continue. Yep. Okay.
Ron Carlson, who speaks at a lot of college campuses, said once he went into a college campus situation, he was speaking at the invitation of a biology professor.
Doesn't work
talking
there.
About the problems with Darwinism, and after the lecture was over, he had lunch with the professor, and he said to the professor, "What do you think of my lecture?" And the professor said, "Well, Ron, what I think you say is true, but I'm going to keep teaching Darwinism anyway." And Ron said, "Why would you do that?" And the professor said, "Because if Darwinism's true."
That's a shampoo bottle moment. That guy who does not teach at college campuses but travels there occasionally has confused his shampoo bottle for a debate that he had. That did not happen. Just full stop. I do not believe you. Sorry.
And then everyone clapped.
And everyone clapped. Yeah, exactly. All right, you can keep going.
I love the argument. A guy who spoke at a campus.
Yes.
Some random guy So we've got all these thousands of scientists working all over the globe, and some random guy pops in and does a talk in a college and proves everyone wrong without any scientific paper or what. And just Frank Turek, that's very believable. It says all you need to know about Frank Turek.
Frank often confuses his shampoo bottle for actual people. So
yeah.
If we did evolve from slimy green algae without intelligent intervention, if there is no God, then I can sleep with whoever I want.
From algae, yes.
No.
Algae.
No, Neslick, you have to be specific, because this is what creationists will do. They will make it either repulsive or ridiculous. So he used slimy green algae because obviously that adds more to his argument. I mean, green algae wasn't enough. It had to be slimy.
Yep, because we all know we evolved from the archaeplastids. That's how that happened. Jesus Christ.
Darwinism is
Go to the zoo to you.
At least he's being honest, right? Now, is that the motivation for all scientists who are Darwin? No, I don't know. I'm just saying for him it was.
No, I don't know.
Thomas Nagel.
I'm really sad that we lost our chlorophyll. Really sad about that.
Photosynthesis. Yep.
Well, I'm not. I wouldn't look good in green. Just saying.
We'd all be the
Hitchens and Dawkins. They seem to have a cosmic authority problem. In fact, I don't want there to be a God either, he said. I don't want the world to be like that. I don't want there to be a God. Remember, science doesn't say anything scientific.
He said he doesn't want the Christian God because the Christian God's a monster.
That prevent them from following the evidence where it leads, which is a problem because they are making authoritative statements in our society now, and when we don't counter them,
here we go again.
Our kids, many of them walk away, and only about a third come back by the time they're age 30.
All of our children live in the 80s.
They walk away from the
perpetually.
Somebody please think of the children.
So, as Paul said, test all things. Don't believe blindly what Einstein, Behe, or Dawkins or anyone says. Look at the evidence for yourself.
Wasn't
because
it
it's laden
Thomas
with philosophy
who got
on all sides of...
Hold on, Peter. Wasn't it Thomas who got rebuked because he didn't believe Jesus when Jesus came back? The whole story is of doubting Thomas.
Yeah.
Yes.
As it's a bad thing to question authority. Thomas was like, I don't think this guy is real. I don't think this is Jesus. And Jesus was like, but here are my hands. And it's like, okay, well, I guess this is the proof that you are Jesus. Well, shame on you for not just believing me at my word.
No, hold on. I have to jump in because I recently did a show with Jesus on Ross' channel. And this question
did you?
And this question came up because one of the smarty pants in the panel said, "Can you hold up your hands to see whether or not you're actually..." I think it was Aaron who said that. "Can you hold up your hands so we can see that you're actually Jesus?" And Jesus responded, "I am all powerful. I got resurrected after 3 days. And you think I would be dumb enough to go around for the rest of my life with holes in my hands? Seriously?" I thought that was a really good rebuttal. That was a really good rebuttal.
Whenever I'm eating fries, it just goes through my hand. It's really,
yeah.
It's really.
Although you could stick a corn dog. You could hold your corn dog in your hand.
Yeah.
Or like a coffee mug or something if it's real.
I'm Dutch. It would take masturbation to a whole new level. I still wouldn't want holes in my hands. Nope. But so if you haven't seen him, he's on Twitter. The Only Begotten is his Twitter handle, and he does have a YouTube channel, and it's hilarious. He tries to break into churches. Jesus does.
I've recently seen a funny video about a Republican Jesus or something like that, and then like one of his followers is quoting it's easier for a camel to go to the eye of the needle than a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. And Jesus was like, "Oh, good God, that's class warfare. Shush."
Okay, continue.
Yes, sure.
Yep.
And science doesn't say anything scientists do. All right, any questions? By the way, there's more in this in the book.
Why are you dumb?
Any questions for Sean? Let's get him the mic, please.
But not Greg. Don't give Greg the mic.
Great talk. I would
just to point that out. So in the previous episodes, we saw Frank Turek's facial expression whenever Greg Koukl said something. Have you noticed that in this segment, he only tried to say something once, and he whispered. He got really intimidated by Turek. You could barely hear him. I'm just saying, it's something that I've noticed. I mean,
Turek was like, "Sit down, sit down."
If you talk once more, I'm going to take this pedestal right here behind me and whack you in the head with it. I mean, let's get to the Q&A.
I'd like to see it happen.
Yeah, me too.
I'm appreciative of so many people in the room who've helped me think more clearly, starting Greg's comment long ago that I took to heart, which is ask people what they mean by evolution. Mm-hmm. There's an example in Science this month of science changing the term again. There's an article on the fruit fly who's adapted a symbiotic relationship with a bacteria. That bacteria confers an advantage to protect against a fungus, which is killing or hurting the fruit fly. This is now evolution. This is evidence in the journal Science that this is an evolutionary adaptation. And what are they saying? They've adopted a new genome into it. All it is bacteria and the fruit fly living together, but the title is evolutionary adaptation. And so again, this isn't descent with modification.
I can be really short on this. He started out is that Frank Turek helped him to think more clearly. Apparently, after everything you just said, he didn't.
Yeah. This is just this is the start of like a co-evolutionary relationship. Organisms enter symbiotic relationships with each other where they mutually benefit, and individuals who enter this relationship are more likely to survive and reproduce than individuals who don't. That sounds like evolution to me. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But whatever. It's fine, I guess. Anyway, keep going.
If you don't understand evolution, then yeah, you probably would make a comment like this.
Through natural selection, this is using this generic term to sort of
gloss
this
over
cloud of and so great example there. So great, And one other comment doing feedback.
Okay,
the notion of the scientists and why would they do this? Exactly, I see the personal agendas of scientists. We're human, and we're all sinners. I think it would be perfect to walk right into Romans 1:19 and 20 at that point.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no one's ever heard that. No one's ever heard it before.
Romans 1:19 and 20 is, for what can be known about God is plain to them, because God has shown it to them. For his invisible attributes, namely his eternal power and divine nature, they have been clearly perceived ever since the creation of the world and the things that have been made. So they are without excuse.
Pack it up. We're done. It's over. We can't rebut that. It's over. Yeah. I quit. I'm dropping out of school. I'm not getting my master's anymore.
I was really hoping that he would tell us what the agenda of the scientists is, because you hear that a lot.
To promote godless materialism, to sin. They just want to sin, Peter.
Yeah. And if everything is so clear, why do you need to read a verse in a book that tells you that God has made it clear to everyone. Why isn't it just clear? If it is just clear, it wouldn't have been mentioned in that book you're holding. Because everyone would know, and everyone would believe in a God because they all have seen and they have no excuse. Apparently they haven't, and some idiot needed to put that in your book to pretend as if that were the truth. Sorry,
well,
not sorry.
It's like what Aaron says. You know, it's like what Aaron says with, well, you have to say it because, you know, Jesus spread his stories of miracles to the world. Well, because nobody believed him at home, right?
There was a reason.
So,
there was a reason that Jesus started preaching in another city, because the people who know him knew that, as Aaron said, he was full of shit. So he needed to move somewhere else where people didn't know him. Yeah, that makes sense. Make total sense to me.
It's kind of the same. It's kind of the same here. It's like you have to say, well, yeah, it's obvious about the thing that is the least obvious to everyone.
Yeah,
because otherwise people will just see right through you. That's the whole point.
It's obvious that verse in that book isn't true, and that's the only reason why it's there, to pretend that it's true.
I was trying to look up some of the paper that he was talking about, like the fruit fly symbiosis with the bacterium. Like there are so many papers on that I cannot find what he's talking about. He needs to be more specific. So
yeah.
Wait, Nestle, you ask a creationist to be specific? Really? How long have you been doing this?
I know. My bad. My mistake.
Okay, continue.
How embarrassing. Yes.
Yeah, sure.
Somebody said that. Paul. Yes, sir.
Just a word about bias, and I owe this observation to J.P. Moreland. J.P. said that in this enterprise, the scientific enterprise, it would be fair to say that both the Christian and the materialist have biases, if what one means by that is that they have preconceived notions about what is possible, and maybe they have come to conclusions about what actually took place. But Buddy points out, and this is the observation I think you can take to the bank, the bias of the theist informs the discussion in a different way than the bias of a materialist. The bias of the materialist limits the options that the kinds of answers that he can come up with in any circumstance.
It's really ironic that that's coming from the guys who are like, everything is God.
The bias of the theist, though, is different. It expands the kinds of explanations that are available to him.
No.
He can take and adopt a materialistic explanation.
Pause. No, it really doesn't. Because what has been the whole thing that Frank Turek has been saying is, oh, you think these are naturalists? Well, it's not. It's God. It's magic.
Mm-hmm.
The whole time. That has been this whole talk, is just saying everything is magic. Magic, magic, magic. So when you have the audacity to say, oh, actually, we're expanding the conversation. Bull crap. No, you aren't. You're saying all of these naturalistic explanations are all inherently wrong, regardless of what they are, and we're just going to supplant them with magic. That's all you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
You have added literally nothing to the conversation. You are only hindering the conversation.
Yeah.
It is just audacious to hear them say crap like that.
I'm glad. I'm glad for Coco, because this is the Q&A, and now he gets to talk without Frank being angry with him. So
yeah.
See, know your place. Know your place, Coco.
If it turns out to be the best explanation for the circumstances. So you hear thunder and you say, well, what is that? Is that the gods bowling? I don't know, let's check it out. Then you find out that there is a materialistic explanation that's completely adequate to the task.
Jesus hit a strike.
Yeah.
Somehow I believe Frank actually believes that.
The theist has also...
Me too.
Also has the alternative of a non-materialist or a non-event causation. They can go to an agent that is outside of the system if the evidence warrants it. So JP's point is that the bias of the theist actually allows the theist to follow the evidence where it leads. So his bias,
it's very virtuous
expanded
bias.
view then, is actually an advantage in discovering
we're on the side
truth,
of the angels.
where a materialist is not allowed to follow the evidence where it leads.
Sorry,
He's
Jackson,
only
we chose
allowed
our
to follow
biases
the evidence
poorly.
to a materialistic conclusion. So his bias, then, in principle at least, can restrict the pursuit of truth.
The Christian's more open-minded. Yes, we're open to both causes. We're open.
Pause.
Have you noticed that no one clapped
Frank
when he
Turek,
said that?
Yeah, first of all, yeah, that was a joke that didn't land. So on Dapper's show, that's a drink trigger. But also, if you read Frank's like tweets, he's constantly bashing gay people, like LGBT people. So him saying we're more open-minded is like, it's again,
Bitch, please.
You're just an idiot. You're just a useful idiot. Okay.
Open to intelligent and non-intelligent causes. Yes, go ahead.
Well, just to agree with Greg on that, Paul Nelson did a talk at Biola a couple of years ago where he was talking about
another
this
creationist
exact thing, and he was saying, if you're a carpenter, you want all the tools you need in order to do the job. And in essence, what's happening in the origin of life debate is they're taking away a tool where you cannot explain certain things at all, and you just can't do the job. And Paul Nelson's very good at showing how there's certain things that require intelligence. He does some things where, you know, if a band, marching band spells.
Just look at Turek's facial expression while this guy's talking.
He does not look happy.
No, he's not happy with this guy.
You ever notice how like none of those inference to the best explanations where it's the supernatural ever end up in journals? You ever notice how like there are no papers in Nature, Science, PNAS, PLOS, or like wherever else that reference the supernatural? Kind of funny.
Okay, like, and at best, with quotes on best, there are like the ID papers that are put out, but they don't argue for ID. They are only arguing against evolution, and that's it. It's just a negative argument. That's all it is.
And the funny thing about those is they have to put those in Journal of Theoretical Biology because they're math papers. When they put out papers about why the waiting time problem works, they can't do it anywhere that'll check their biology because they'll get roasted. They have to put it in a math journal because people will check the math and be like, oh yeah, your math is right. But no one's going to check the biology.
Your assumption's right.
Yeah, your assumptions are right. And given these assumptions, it leads to this conclusion. Yeah, that's fine. But are the assumptions justified? And the answer is heck no. Anyway.
Out cow on the field, that takes prior notion. It's a teleology argument. And he's like, you can't, if you don't have the tool of explaining with intelligence, you can't explain cow on the field. So I just wanted to agree with Greg on that.
Very good. You can explain cow dung, but not cow.
Can you pause for a moment?
And even then, you need intelligence.
Like they are saying that we are just bringing more tools into the picture, but no, you aren't. What you're doing is you're bringing in a flamethrower and you are burning some tools that you don't like, and then you throw away the flamethrower and you say like, oh, we have nothing to replace it. There is no replacement because there is nothing there.
Yep.
And that's it.
Intelligent cow to do that. Yes, go ahead.
It is very important the way you pointed out there's different types of science. The general public has been kind of educated to think that science is empirical science and it's proven, both of which aren't accurate.
No.
No.
If they believe that, they're wrong.
Proof isn't even part of science. There is no proof in science. Not ever. That's a mathematical concept. Anyway.
Yeah. So if they're taught that, they're taught wrong.
Yes.
The thing that they're starting to get in school districts, but only barely, is that there's also HD, hypothetical deductive science, hypothetical inductive science, and it's
what?
It's supposed to be taught, like a school district near us, they have it as part of their objectives, but there's maybe one page on it, and
what does
they
that
don't
mean?
really teach it. So if that's brought into the consciousness a little bit better, they'll realize, or the hypocrisy will be exposed a little bit more. But like you call it forensic science, but
is he saying students are not taught the difference between like inductive and deductive reasoning? Is that what he's saying?
That's
I've never heard of what he called it. I've never heard of that.
That's what I got from it as well.
Because like I got bad news for you, my guy. Students are taught the difference between induction and deduction. You may not have paid attention in school, or you're probably homeschooled. But you know, the rest of us at least got an intro to it in science. So whatever.
Okay, can you play back for like a few minutes, 2 seconds, because he was talking about forensic science. Like I want to hear what the point he's going to make.
It's going to be tricky, but I'll try.
There I go, gonna play. Yeah.
But like you called it forensic science, but it's recognized that there are other types. I mean, most things Einstein did, you know, that he's making, you know, inductions and
right.
But yes,
it can also be.
I don't even think Frank understands what he's saying.
No, I don't even think the guy.
I don't think
himself understands what he is saying. He starts making a sentence about Einstein and then realizes that he doesn't understand it enough to finish the sentence, so he just stops.
It seems like nobody really knows what he's getting at. Oh, I didn't even realize what time it was. Oh, we're at the end of the show.
we are close.
Let's cut it here.
We are close.
Although, what the hell is going on in the live chat about Atlantis?
I don't even want to know.
In the live chat is about whether or not aliens have visited the planet. Well, that's an easy one to answer, because if you have to believe the stories, these aliens they could have gotten here in an instance if they use wormhole technology or something like that, or folding space. That would be a possibility. They wouldn't get here just to get Bubba and Enos on the spaceship and then probing them anally. They would, if they're so sophisticated that they can make a spaceship that gets them here, they would, at least when they get here, start with observations and then maybe try and contact world leaders. They wouldn't look up Bubba and Enos' ass. The last thing they would do.
Allegedly.
All
right.
Atlantis was an alien civilization confirmed.
Absolutely. All right. Well, it has been 2 hours. I want to thank you guys for coming. Thank you, Peter, for hosting and co-hosting, and thank you, Nestling, for also co-hosting with us. Appreciate it.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you, everybody in the live chat, for watching. I don't know if the scripted video I've written will come out, or our next live stream will happen first. We'll find out by next Thursday. So, thanks everybody for watching. We're going to catch you all next time.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.